Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I'm the Gnarly Gnome. This is Cincy Brewcast. It's the voice of Cincy Craft, and it's been a while since we sat down with the folks from Braxton, and I don't actually know why, because it's not like there hasn't been things going on with Braxton. I was kind of going over notes last night trying to figure out all the things that we need to talk about, and there is a huge list of stuff because you guys have not only been, you've always been busy as a company, but it feels like post-pandemic you dialed it up just a little bit. There has been over the last couple years, it doesn't seem like you have opened a new space every single year.
Yep.
It's that's a lot.
It certainly is. Yeah, it certainly is.
We are coming at you from the newest of those spaces. This is Braxton Factory 52.
That's correct.
Braxton Norwood. How are we referring to this?
Braxton Factory 52.
Yeah. The former HiWire space still has some HiWire personality, which we'll get into. But let's start with this idea of growth and evolution as a company, because I think that's something that everybody's trying to figure out right now as far as breweries go. There's some places that are kind of freaking out about it and don't really know how to grow.
Sure.
There's some that are completely changing who they are to make sure that they can grow. You guys, it has felt from the outside looking in that it's very natural.
Oh,
I'm sure.
Oh boy,
it's different for you guys.
That's great. That's the kindest thing I think anybody's ever said.
Jake and Evan, I guess I should introduce you guys to.
Absolutely.
The Rouse brothers. If you listen to this show, you've probably remember hearing them at some point. So
for sure,
we don't need to go too deep on the introductions.
No, well, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
We certainly, much like everybody else, understand that the world is different. I mean, it is very different post-pandemic since we opened our doors 10 years ago in 2015. And we've been talking a lot about what does that look like and what does it look like for the next 10 years versus the next 10 months and how does that play? And so, we've always long wanted a place in Cincinnati. That's why we were, partnered with the Model Group to take over the former 3 Point space. That neighborhood just never really rebounded the way that we had hoped that it would. Right. And when we were talking, like you said, a lot of breweries right now are trying to figure it out of all sizes. It isn't just small guys, big guys, medium guys. We had a long-standing relationship with the HiWire team for 3-4 years? Very long time. Evan got married in Asheville, so that's been a big piece of our lives, Asheville in general. Right. And unfortunately, when Hurricane Helene hit down in Asheville and kind of wiped out that entire city, my first text was to Adam Charnock about, hey, what can we do to help you guys? Do you need us to brew beer for you? What do you like? I couldn't imagine losing our production facility. More importantly, they didn't have potable water for 2 months. They were literally freight trucking in water to brew beer. And
the space just opened back up to the public. The week before they made the announcement that they were going to be closing here. That's how long that place was down.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize that. We just came back from Gatlinburg, and if you go just past Gatlinburg, you start to see I-40 is still a mess. It's insane how much damage is going on down there.
Absolutely crazy. And fortunately they had local brewers in the community. I think Sierra Nevada helped them quite a bit because they were unaffected. So but we just stayed in touch, and just as we began to have conversations, I have long been a customer of Factory 52. I love it up here. I love this development, and he had just reached out to us randomly one day and said, "Hey, would you guys ever be interested in a partnership or really taking over this facility? I need to refocus my business on Asheville."
Right.
And we started that conversation right around the holidays of last year. I think. I mean, he flew up. Just to be clear, this wasn't, and we're going to get into the HiWire stuff in particular, but this wasn't taking over a failing location. This location was doing incredibly well. It was a great location for their portfolio, but they just really needed to focus on back home. So he didn't really take it lightly. We didn't take it lightly either. He flew up. We spent a day and a half together kind of showing him who we are as a company. Then we went down to Asheville for a week and kind of spent time with his team about who are they as a brewery, and we've long known their beers. And then finally just decided it was time to kind of make it happen. So we're excited to open the doors officially to Braxton Factory 52 tomorrow on the 4th of July. We retained their entire team, bolstered their team to add some people. And we're like most breweries figuring stuff out. There's still a lot of their furniture and stuff in here. We're waiting on some stuff to come in, but it'll slowly transition kind of the rest of the way over the next, call it 3 to 4 weeks.
Well, and I almost think that little bit of a transition period also probably is helpful for some of the people that were diehard HiWire people, and they're like, oh, now Braxton's going to come in and take over the space that I love, and I don't know their beer, and I think it helps kind of ease them into it.
Yeah.
When you guys talked about taking this over, you talked about this idea of a partnership too, that there is still HiWire beer on tap here.
Yeah,
I didn't make.
They have so the way that it sits up right now is Braxton beers occupy taps 1 through 12. HiWire occupies taps 13 through 22, and then there's 2 ciders on tap right now. By the end of the day today, we'll have 2 cocktails, 2 ciders, but we're always going to carry HiWire beer. It's really important to us that we help them use this.
Always. Like
always.
This is okay. I
always.
like that.
Now, will it always be half the taps? Probably not. But we're going to continue to listen to the customer who came here and hear from them about what they want to see. So the other thing that we have in the works, and I know Evan's working with their brewing team. We're scheduling a collaboration beer. We're going to head down to Asheville.
Oh, rough life. We got to go schedule a collaboration.
Right. Real bummer. And do some collaborations for the upcoming kind of fall and winter. But yeah, we couldn't be more excited.
If I hear that you guys are scheduling a collaboration with somebody in like Aruba or something like that, I'll understand that it's all a scam.
It's a work trip.
I will call out another brewery, MPH, over in Montgomery, that has a very different arrangement with Left Hand. And when they said that they were going to have Left Hand beer and their beer on tap, I was like, oh, that's really cool. We can go and we can get all these cool Left Hand beers. And you go up there and there's like 2 beers on. And like I as a Left Hand fan, don't want that either.
Sure.
If you're going to have some kind of a collaboration, I want to see a good representation of that other brewery. I don't want it to be too much, but I need a nice little mix. And seeing how many you guys have on gives me hope that you guys kind of get that. You're beer fans, and I think that helps. And HiWire does some really cool stuff that I think people don't necessarily always appreciate because we get so territorial, maybe, here in Cincinnati, if that's a fair way to put it. As you guys, as a company, I'm making an assumption here that at some point there will be a Braxton that is not in the Cincinnati area. It'll be somewhere else. I'm just making an assumption. You don't have to say anything. If that was going to happen, does that worry you at all about that idea of the territorial nature of craft beer drinkers, or is that just something that we're weird with here in Cincinnati?
Yeah, I think it's, we talk about that and think about that a lot, right? So I think it would have to be purposeful if we were to do that. Before the pandemic, we talked a lot about moving outside of the greater Cincinnati area. Post-pandemic, doesn't make a ton of sense right now. We've really focused on going deep within our home market.
Right.
And so how does that translate if you were to put one in, say, Asheville, right? Like, does anybody care about Braxton in that area? Maybe not. But, if you were specific on targeting like a beer town, right? Like we go to Asheville a lot for the beer there. It could work.
I almost think the complete opposite. Instead of going to a beer town, again, just got back from Gatlinburg, and it sucks. It sucks trying to find a good beer in Gatlinburg. And I don't care like what good brewery it is. All somebody has to do is open up a tap room right on the strip there in Gatlinburg, and it would kill.
I'll piggyback off what Evan said. I think to what he was mentioning, we were long thinking about how do we go regional? Right. How do we do that? I don't really think that's even remotely in the playbook anymore. I think we both really love being able to visit all of our tap rooms at any given time. I think that adds a lot to how they are represented to the customer. The fact that we just pop in with our families and are like, hey, and can be there to help and just kind of, guide that along.
Just the logistics too, day to day.
Exactly.
Hey, we're out of this.
And I will say that, you mentioned we've opened one a year for the past 3 years. I think we're going to take a little bit of a breather right now. And, this one was one of the opportunities that comes up, and you're just like, we have to figure this out. And I'll say it's been very painful, specifically because the size of the last 2 that we have opened, Union in November of last year, this one in July of this year, has put a real strain on the amount of beer that is needed for tap rooms. It's almost 2.5 times our number of kegs we need for tap rooms, and that's causing some ripple effects for us to figure out, how do we keep that variety up? How do we do that unique stuff? How do we keep Tropic Flair fresh? All of those things. And it's stuff that, now that we've got our foothold in our 5 locations, how do we take a step back and just get better at those 5 before we really think about anything else?
Right. And, it's growth is good. Too much growth, as we've seen with plenty of places in craft beer, sometimes too much growth can be a very bad thing. It can it can overstress the machine of it all, and it'll collapse upon itself at some point. And it is from the outside looking in, it's fun to watch how everybody navigates that process. And it's even if you just take that selection of we'll say the top 5 size wise breweries here in town, how each one of them is doing it pretty differently. Like it's fascinating. What as you guys have opened different spaces, and the last couple I think have been the most interesting for me to kind of see what they look like and what the personality of them is. Like how has that evolved? Like what you guys think a Braxton taproom looks like?
We've been trying to define that as we go, especially from textures and colors and what it feels, what the furniture looks like. And we've I think we've narrowed it down, and we've gotten better. Like you mentioned the tile when you walked in, that tile is now in 3 of our tap rooms. So we're trying to carry over some of those things into each one. But when you take over a tap room, such as this one, the process is a lot different than when you build one from the ground up like an Union. And so what you can do can be limited. So you've got to be creative in how you get there to make it yours and still have some nods to the people that were here prior.
Yeah, I mean, we see some spaces, Voodoo is one that I'll call out. Again, maybe not so positively, that you walk in and it just kind of feels the same as all the other Voodoo tap rooms. Not necessarily very comfortable, very kind of, it feels like they just got things out of a Voodoo catalog and dropped them into the space. And so like there is this danger if you go too far that direction of here's what we are and just ignore a space or ignore a neighborhood or ignore what people are going to be sitting there drinking. And again, that's hard for some places to figure out.
Yeah. And I think that what's changed over the past few years is we've taken a really hard look at our customer. Like, we used to be our customers moving into the urban core. That's where they are. That's why 3 Points made a lot of sense. That's why, downtown is the area. Let's make this really urban, hip area. Well, now the customer has aged a little bit. They're in their 30s. They have their first kid.
Come on.
Myself included. They had their first kid, second kid, and they're looking for a place that they can bring the family. And so now a big part of what we talk about is how do we activate a green space. So a big piece of making this deal come to life here at Factory 52 was making sure that we took over that outdoor bar and that green space, because we've learned in Union that can be that communal gathering hub for a suburban area if done appropriately. And we think we have the playbook for doing that. So it's been really interesting to kind of redefine what that is. But to your point, really lean into who we are as a company, but not necessarily completely blow out everything that existed. So like here at Factory 52, you probably can't see it on this video, but we kept the mural of the Queen that existed in the tap room, because like this is such a cool history of a site that made playing cards. Like it's so, and I think the branding of this neighborhood is really fantastic that I'm like, we just want to lean into that too. So there's some cool stuff coming and very excited about where it's going.
Product-wise, how do you figure out what each neighborhood might be looking for versus another one? I know that there are some places that think that there are some places that'll open up a tap room and they think that everybody's just going to be drinking cocktails and seltzer and maybe neglect the beer side a little bit more than we want to. I think if anybody listens to any of my shows, you know who I'm talking about. We need more beer on tap. How do you figure that balance out, or is it really just kind of a trial and error, watching and changing as you need to?
It's trial and error. It's pretty interesting, though. I think most tap rooms have the same top 5 beers.
It's pretty wild,
for us anyway. But we like at Barrel House, we lean into barrel aged beers a lot more than we do in Covington. But you might have Dark Charge or whatever barrel aged on tap at each tap room.
But do you get more people coming in and ordering cocktails in Covington versus Union?
I think cocktails are probably they're becoming a bigger mix. I mean, we're putting cocktails on tap here,
right?
And we have cocktails on tap at each of our locations now. But we're still a brewery, right?
Yeah.
So we still want to have the full bar service. We want to have those options for people, but we're still beer focused.
Right.
We've taken a different approach to how we approach spirits, and that's been a partnership with Molly Wellman. That's been
Who's that?
remarkable.
Molly. It's a joke.
It's been remarkable. I mean, because we know that customers want to be able to enjoy a cocktail, but we are a brewery, and we've talked long about this. We don't want to be in the distilling game, at least yet. I mean, maybe that changes 10 years down the road, but oh, sorry, my bad. All right, maybe that changes 10 years down the road, but we don't want to be making our own spirits. So we actually partnered with a local non-producing distiller. Non-producing spirit. Anyway, a brand, OKI Spirits, and they make phenomenal single barrel bourbon. They source it from all across Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana, but they didn't have physical locations. So we approached them and like, guys, let us help breathe life into your brand while we can learn it and treat it like our own. And that, spun some really unique product creations. Evan got to work with them to create a 10-year-old dark charge bourbon last year, which was remarkable. So
again, rough life. Let's collaborate with the distillery.
So we're really taking a different approach. And that different approach is that we want you to know that you can get a really good cocktail here, but it doesn't need to eat up tap space.
Right.
With that comes a lot more training and a lot more emphasis on, investment in educating our bartenders, but it's gone pretty well so far.
Well, and I don't think I think that's probably one of the worst things that has happened from the rise of craft breweries, that there's a lot of bartenders that aren't really great bartenders. They can pour a beer and
Sure.
they can work quickly, but they're not good bartenders. There's another kind of interaction that is supposed to be happening there, and when you're making a cocktail, hopefully that is part of that training that goes into it, and seeing places kind of up their bar game a little bit, I think is creating better bartenders around town.
We've had 4 trainings with Molly Wellman. Each one of them is about 3 to 4 hours. And I think the first 2 hours of the entire time, she's not even behind the bar.
Yeah.
She's just explaining like, you are on when you're behind the bar. You're talking to guests. You're asking them. You're suggesting them. You're the expert. So that's very real. Like, you're exactly right.
Yeah, it's funny, like when I walk into a bar that Molly is at, because she does pop around to different bars around town. If you ever hear that she's somewhere, go there. I don't order a drink. I just sit down and I'm
Let
like,
her serve it.
I'm feeling this today, and she's like, I gotcha, and it's always good.
Yeah.
You mentioned in there that you don't have the desire to make your own spirits. I'm curious about that line as far as like other products. We all remember the thing that happened with seltzer, kind of pre-pandemic, the explosion of it around town, and the breweries that you were one of the ones that leaned in heavily to it.
Oh, yeah.
There were a lot that leaned in heavily to it, and a lot that probably are mad that they did. As other products become popular and pop up, how do you figure out what things you do lean into, what things you don't? Right now, we're seeing the rise of THC. There's some really great ones around town. Stasi, delicious. How do you figure out the products that you want to lean into as a Braxton, I'll say company, because it could be its own brand that lives separate?
I think it's interesting. We have the fortunate ability to use our tap rooms to learn from our customers, right?
Sure.
So, and we do that. We did that with Vive, with all the new flavors of seltzers. We would use them and try them in the tap room first, see what sells, and then take it larger. As we grow tap rooms, we kind of scale back our distribution footprint to focus on our tap rooms and our physical spaces. So we have the ability to look at what sells in the tap rooms and kind of lean into those products. I think ones that are on our radar right now, vodka seltzers are a big one.
Yeah.
So your High Noons of the world. Tequila base is pretty big as well. So it's a combination of what sells in the tap room and also what we like to drink. Yeah,
that's a big one. I mean, that's a really big one. What do we like to drink? And if we like to drink it, do other people like to drink it? And how do you play that off and do it well?
I find myself like there's some products like a vodka seltzer or a hard tea or something like that. Like I might find myself drinking that when I'm sitting by the pool. I'm never going to drink it when I'm sitting in a tap room. So like where I drink things is very different too. So something might sell to go in cans, but it's not something that somebody's going to sit here and order on time. Look, if you're ordering your hard teas and sitting in a tap room and enjoying them, more power to you, but it's just not where I drink it.
Sure.
But it is interesting to kind of see how people drink and why they drink and when they drink and how these places around town kind of meet them there.
Yeah.
Anytime that I want to drink something and there is no local option for me to drink of that, it gets under my skin. And I'm like, all right, somebody needs to be making this for me. Liquid Death. I drink so much Liquid Death. And I understand that you're getting into like FDA stuff and that's probably a pain in the ass. Why is somebody not canning some fizzy water for me? It seems like something that we could be doing.
It's a great question. I think for us, we learned a lot during Vive. We rushed to that market. It went incredibly well. I still say to this day that had the pandemic not happened and professional sports not canceled for the first time in a century, that brand would still be very, very relevant today. But we learned a lot from that, like what it looks like to shift your entire company's focus away from your core product. And I think that's why you're seeing us. We're certainly looking at THC seltzer. We're certainly active on the political front for THC seltzer. We're learning a lot about how the regulations are shaking out, but we're being a little bit more cautious about running at our own brand right this second for a lot of reasons. But we do see that occasion. We see that it's real. And even though I might not be the consumer of that product, I'm watching a lot of what's happening. So it'll be interesting. We do sell a Stasi here.
Right.
And so, it's kudos to them for building a great product, and we'll continue to see kind of what the customer tells us and go from there.
Right. I think that any place that is jumping into a product just because they think it's going to be the next big thing is probably doing it the wrong way. I think that really listening to people and watching what people want is clearly the smarter way to do it. But I get it too. Everybody wants to be first. Sure. Let's talk about the bigger picture of kind of where people are right now as drinkers. Depending on what you read, everybody says young people don't want to drink anymore, and if they are, they're drinking, the weed water or whatever it might be. What do you guys see as kind of that evolution of drinking in the country? And how do breweries fit into it?
It's tough because the consumer is changing 100%. I mean, we're selling a Stasi here, and we're selling a lot of it. I mean, that is the growing thing right now, and it's hot. I think we sell a ton of High Noon as well. Yeah. Beer is flat. I think it was down 4% last year. And I think with the younger generation not drinking or drinking less, and all the current pushes to drink less and be healthier and be more active, that changes as well. We sell athletic. We sell a fair amount of athletic. Non-alc offerings are becoming even more popular. So that I think just the overall trend is changing of what people are drinking and how much they're drinking.
Right.
And I think how we position ourselves, you really need to be, for us, we're really thinking about how do we take the physical location and make it the gathering place and the hub for the community, such that it isn't just about product. I think that over the past 6 months, part of what we've talked about is that we've probably leaned a little too far away from product, and we need to kind of find that happy balance of like, how do we activate around our products to make them create, amazing things. But if you're able to do that and able to be that gathering place, you'll learn pretty quickly ways to keep people here, what they want, and then just deliver what they want. I think longer term, as we continue to think about the brand as a whole, beer is not going anywhere. Everything's cyclical. In fact, I was just out in Napa Valley. We've made a lot of friends out in Napa. I love wine. Talking to a lot of the wineries, and the wineries that we love are really those mid-tier wineries that they produce between 6,000 and 15,000 cases of wine. Not a ton. But when we talk to them, they're going through that same reckoning that we went through 5 years ago. Bourbon also going through a very similar transition where everything was hot coming out of the pandemic, and now people are kind of settling down saying, you know what, I probably can't drink a bottle of bourbon every week, or I can't drink 3 beers every single night. And but it's and so as that kind of stabilizes, where do you want to be, and where do our brands meet those customers, and how do we find them?
But I see so many places that I feel they're really good at identifying what their customers want, and then lean into that, and it turns out their customers just want a restaurant and a light beer, and so that's all it becomes. And as a company, I struggle with that. Then, and that's me again looking in from the outside. That this started as a brewery, and now it's just a place to go sit down and have dinner and drink a fairly boring beer. there's a certain line there where you got to meet people where they want to be, but then also push them where you want them to be.
Sure.
Maybe that is a bad way to word it, but it's still a brewery. There used to be an excitement of sitting at a bar and, somebody coming in and like all I drink is Bud Light. And it's like, that's fine. We've got this that you'll probably like, but hey, try this.
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. Drink one of those. Oh, that wasn't bad. What else do you have? And then it pushes people to these other places. Then you get this discovery and this thing. And that was when beer was growing. And I wonder if some of the flattening of beer is because we've lost that sense of excitement about drinking. Now it's just, oh, well, you want this? Here it is. If you give people what they want, it's just going to be Bud Light. That's what people drink.
Yeah, I mean,
that's fine, but
I think that's fairly true. But at the same time, as Evan mentioned, like all of our tap rooms have at least 24 taps, right? We right now at any given time have anywhere from 4 to 5 light options. That's always going to happen. Garage Lime, Blueprint, which is our new take on light lager, partnering with Spirit of Construction, and then usually 1 or 2 craft lagers that our team gets pretty excited about, whether it's a slow pour, or a Zwickel, or a Helles, or anything like that. I think as long as you satisfy that customer so that you know that everybody can come, and don't get me wrong, if we look at the scale of those 5 taps, the volume is 3x the rest of the 18 taps that are there, but that doesn't mean that we're going to go put another 5 light on. So we're trying to figure out, how do you get that excitement back? How do you find those brands that make sense? This year we partnered with the Zoo for their 150th anniversary to create Safari, which was adjacent to light beer, but lemongrass flavored and pretty neat. And did it do awesome? I mean, we packed the place because they brought animals. People tried it. So you really need to think differently about how to get people that trial, where 6-7 years ago, trial was an engine. Like it was, you go to a tap room and first thing I'm starting with is a flight. I need 3 of your craziest things. I think our flights are down 50% from last year, or from 2 years ago. So you've got to find unique ways to get trial on those products and then hopefully bring that excitement back.
Yeah, it's I don't know how that balance. I don't know how everybody is supposed to do that either. Like as business gets tough for people, and as like that I get it. There are some places that are struggling and just need butts and seats and people spending money, however that is. And I don't know.
Well, I think let me chime in on one that I think is a prime example and actually a fairly hot topic. Something Evan and I talk about a lot. Tropic Flare is one of the best New England IPAs in the Midwest, I think. I mean, I would argue it got that reputation. We hear a lot from guests that want it the month that it's canned. And, oftentimes we've got it on the shelf 4 or 5 months after a canning date. Our quality procedures, we try to pull it at 5 months. Like, we don't want anything longer than that. It is obviously better, fresher. But to your point, that customer is changing.
Right.
Like, our batch sizes of Tropic Flare have dropped. We were doing 120 barrels of it a month. We were selling it across the entire tri-state area. Now we're doing, 40 barrels of it a month, maybe every other month. And the velocity is very different. People are not drinking that at the same rate that they were, and that's where it gets really hard because, if you read on, the community, the groups, all of that, like the thrashing that we get about that, of course, we don't want stale Tropic Flare. But as you're trying to think about how is this industry changing, how is it different, we can't brew that in a 20 barrel batch every single month. It takes a month to ferment. So you've got to find that happy balance and know that you're not going to be great at everything.
Also, the majority of people that are drinking Tropic Flare don't care if it's 3 months old or 4 months old. They can't tell the difference. Yeah. And if you are picking up a 6-pack, looking at the date and be like, can you believe this? And it's like, well, that's still full 6 cans. You didn't even drink one. Like, what are you actually complaining about? Like, try the beer.
Try
and
it
tell
first.
them if the beer is bad compared to what you want, that's valid.
For sure.
But try the beer.
Yeah.
Like there is this whole beer nerd mentality, and I'm probably guilty of it sometimes, but that you get mad about things that you shouldn't be mad about. Like, beer is still meant to just be sat and drank with friends, and like it's the beverage of the everyman, or however you want to put it, and like that. Just sit down and have a beer. Like, get over it. And I think people are losing that. Let's talk about garage beer. You mentioned it a little bit that it's always on tap. Let's talk about what happened with garage beer, because I still think that people have no idea what is going on with garage beer. Garage beer was born at Braxton.
Was. Before the pandemic, 2018.
Yep. Talking about brewing beer that you want to drink. I mean, that was the reason that it was created.
Every time I see an article that calls it an Ohio-born beverage, it gets under my skin a little bit too. Maybe that's a beer nerd thing.
But yeah, I mean, it had legs. It was the hottest craft lager. I think it still is, even though they've moved it to domestic in all the stores. And it had legs, and we didn't necessarily have the resources or the desire to take it where it had potential to go.
Right.
I believe they're in all 50 states. They were targeting to do that by the end of last year, which is pretty incredible. And so we partnered with a company and ended up spinning the brand off to a company that has the resources to take it national.
Right.
At a very high level. That's kind of what happened.
Yeah, I mean, up until last year, we made all of it. We have since transitioned their can business off because it's 50 states now, and we'd like to make the other 23 taps that we were talking about. We still make draft for all of our locations, and we still work with them on partnerships. The Kelsey brothers being involved is an amazing opportunity for us, and they've brought such a unique attention to this brand that we could never do.
Oh, they do such a good job too on the marketing side.
For sure.
This whole thing recently with the bed and
yeah, exactly. And so we'll continue to pour it in every tap room every day, and it will likely be our number one beer forever. I don't see that being dethroned. Despite anything we throw at it, it's still, Dark Charge Day garage beer is the number one beer. So it's, it's interesting. And yeah, I mean, it was great for us. I mean, we still own a good chunk of it. We partner with them. And we try to do more to help represent them here in Greater Cincinnati. But we knew we were talking to our friends at Kroger, our friends at Meijer, our friends at, Costco. Guys, we think you're great at Braxton. We think this brand has a ton of legs. We're not taking it beyond the 6 states that you're in, just because we don't think you can do it. And that was the right call.
There's also, there's something really smart about the brand too, that they can kind of be the anti-craft beer brand that, like, if you guys were still behind it, like, it would be like, oh, come on, like, that's just like it becomes like a fake marketing thing, which maybe it still is a little bit, but like, it feels more genuine coming from this company. Like, oh, this is all we do. No, we just got a light beer. That's it. That's all we want to do. Like, I really kind of like how it's evolved and grown into its own thing, and it's still a great beer. Timing wise, with the explosion of kind of light lager with craft beer drinkers, like, everything just is hitting perfect with it.
Yeah.
How does so you guys are launching or have launched Blueprint?
Yeah.
How does that sit next to things like garage beer in your tap room, or you guys have had a couple other light beers that have popped up here and there. How do they sit next to each other? How do they?
From a profile standpoint, we designed Blueprint to be more crafty. And we wanted it to be, we wanted it to still be a light lager, and kind of the marketing behind that, partnering with Spirit of Construction to kind of go after the trades and the blue collar workers. But we also wanted it to target our general audience as well. So if you actually try them side by side, they're very different. We used a very fruit forward yeast, and we used a hop that is known to give off strawberry and berry flavors. So kept it light, but put a craft twist on it.
Right. I'm fascinated by all of, not that I drink that much light lager, but I do. And I'm fascinated by how many we have here in town, and yet still how different each one of them can still manage to be. Like, that was always the joke for years, that you could take all the light beers and put them next to each other and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And you can with the craft ones. Like, you can still tell a difference. I don't know if I could identify them all, which
for sure.
Stay tuned, that might be coming. But but like, they all have their own personality, and it is kind of fun to watch how that keeps kind of growing and evolving. With Blueprint, so you guys are definitely kind of leaning back into tap rooms. Is this a beer that you're going to try to push out in the market more?
Yeah, our focus is to really push it in Greater Cincinnati. So that beer comes with a partnership with Spirit of Construction, which is so true to who we are in a blue collar brand. Spirit of Construction is an awesome organization funded primarily by the biggest construction companies in Greater Cincinnati to raise scholarship funds for people who want to go into trade work.
Gotcha.
And we witness this now. There's such a deficit of trade work, handiwork, like that kind of stuff. I mean, even brewing side, like it is difficult to hire people right now who want to go into this line of work. And so being able to work on workforce development with them is really cool. And it presents some cool, unique event opportunities too. We've done touch-a trucks at each of our tap rooms where they've worked with like Messer Construction to bring massive dump trucks, and it's just a neat thing. So we think it has a lot of legs here in Cincinnati. We know we have to do a better job at getting it out there. Right now, I think there's a couple billboards around town, but we're working on some content development that'll hopefully push that story forward.
I think that is something that I've noticed over the last few years, is the way that breweries have been able to take a brand and figure out how that brand itself connects with something other than just them. Like it's not just, hey, here's Braxton light lager, drink it. It connects in a different way, and it's like, hey, if you're this type of person, this is why this is the beer that you should be drinking. Or if you're at this type of an event or this situation, this is what you should be drinking. And like that is definitely working with a lot of people to connect with drinkers in a different way than just sitting in a tap room and just drinking whatever is new. What products have you guys released recently, or are you releasing that you guys are excited about, that kind of really ignite that fire a little bit and be like, oh, this is cool?
I think Hopridge for me, it's our pale ale that we've come out with here recently. It's in cans. It'll be in Kroger and stores and whatnot. First time in a very long time outside of just a small 20-barrel batch for the tap rooms, if you will, that we're using whole cone hops. So we use our Louder Ton as a hop back, and we throw in hundreds of pounds of whole cone Cascade.
That's how you know somebody has been spending too much time in Nashville at
yes, you are correct. There's definitely a nod to Sierra Nevada Pale Ale there. Definitely a favorite of our brewing team. But a little bit different yeast strain, but tons of whole cone Cascade. That's really fun.
Styles and flavors that I think we've kind of drifted away from for a while, that I still like. Anytime I get a good West Coasty American hopped beer, like it immediately takes me back to kind of those early days of getting into craft beer, and it's so good.
And the other thing I'll say is that I'm really excited about our archive series. We turned 10 this year. We still have a few celebrations to happen along the way, but when we turned 10, we looked back and we're like, man, we've been brewing beer for 10 years, and Braxton Labs was such a unique place that it spit out so many different styles. At one point, it was a new style a week, which is way too much to think about now. But we went to our team, a lot of our team, and just said, hey, name a couple beers that really made you excited about Braxton. And so we brought back what we're calling the archive series, taproom only releases that takes some of the biggest releases that we did over 10 years. We just did Cherry Turnover. Tomorrow we're tapping Blueberry Strudel, which was a fantastic, Braxton Labs beer. I think Edge of Mysteries is coming back. So some of the cool things that we've done in the past to kind of pay an homage to 10 years and then really kind of tee up next year, which I think is going to be a really interesting year for us. And I don't want to get too much into it, but you mentioned garage beer. I'll say the biggest challenge that Evan and I have had with the whole company as a whole is when you do something like we did with Garage, partner and, let somebody take over your flagship. I think we severely underestimated how much time it was going to take to re-identify ourselves in the market and really understand who is Braxton now. Like, it was so easy when you go into every conversation, you need to have garage beer. Like, that's who we are. Well, it's not yours anymore. And like you have a small part in it, but it's not, it's so us trying to really retool and understand, like, what are those 2 or 3 beers that we should be going into market with, talking to accounts and saying, you need to be carrying these. And that's, it's taken a little bit longer than we thought, I think.
I think that in the market and in a tap room, are two very different types of drinking experiences. And like, there are some breweries that just thrive just in their tap room and their location, and there's some that just thrive out in the market. It's really hard to play both sides of that coin. And
so hard.
It is almost like 2 different lineups of products that people want in those 2 different places, and how packaging is supposed to look and how that still communicates with the brand. It's things that like we don't really always appreciate as drinkers, but are everything when you're talking about selling beer. I'm going to throw out one for the archive series that needs to come back.
Let's hear it.
1957.
Oh, wow. Wow.
One of my favorite beers that you guys have ever done.
We may be able to fit that in.
Every time baseball season kicks off in the spring, I'm like, man, like all these are fine. Like I like all these IPAs and these lagers and stuff that everybody's releasing as baseball beers, but I want me some 1957.
Okay, that's good to know.
Single-handedly created a Cracker Jack shortage in the greater Cincinnati area. So going back to this location, Factory 52, how do you guys anticipate that this space will kind of fit in with the other stuff that's going on? There's lots of restaurants right around the corner. You guys have been one of the interesting places to watch, again, as you grow, that you didn't open a restaurant, you didn't do your own food thing. Well, you didn't really do your own food thing like in the way that some of these places have. How do you connect with that and let people know that, like, yeah, you can come here and there's still food right there. It's, it's all part of this thing.
Yeah, we've always we took a step into the restaurant business in 2019. Evan and I did, and we'll never do it again.
I feel like people have been saying that forever.
Yeah, and we just, sometimes you just gotta
Of course,
bear
people
that
say
pain.
that about the beer business.
Sure. But no, we've always built phenomenal restaurant relationships and partnerships that allowed us to do what we do best and emphasize what they do best. And as long as there's top to top alignment, we can solve virtually any problem. So Dewey's in our Union and Covington location. Fort Mitchell, we have a it's now a slider truck that did a quick rebrand. Here, it's a very unique and interesting proposal because there's 14 restaurants inside the Gather All Food Hall, and with technology, they'll deliver it right to your table inside of this brewery. So we're working really hard on getting that word out to customers, because I don't think customers really know that they can sit here, order food, and what's cool about it is that if you want burgers and you want pizza and I want Italian or Chinese or Korean fried chicken, Decibel's over there, we can place one order and they'll bring that exact order directly here, right. And it's a great dine-in experience. So we've got a lot more work to do on that. We've established a kiosk that allows people to pick up and know that there's a little bit more, but it's all about trying to do that. And then taking it out to the outside in the lawn with pop-ups and those types of things when we're doing, I think one of the cool events we're doing is breakfast at Wimbledon. Tennis has become a really fun kind of sport that's been growing, and being able to pop up out there, show the game or show the match on TV, and then really, allow people to get some food. It just drive that awareness.
My kids like to go to breweries, but they don't love to go to breweries. There's some that they love to, but you give them that situation where, like, hey, we're gonna go have like a picnic and sit in the grass and eat some food. I'm like, oh yeah, we want to do that, and then you can come somewhere like this and do that.
Yeah,
and the kids can think that you're doing this for them when really you're doing it because there's a brewery right here. Yep. I think my oldest is figuring it out. That's a brewery, isn't it? Yeah, yes it is. How do you? As you guys grow and evolve, how do you find ways to connect with, because we have seen this, I guess it's always kind of been there, this rise of people that say, I'm not going to go to that brewery, there's too many kids there, or I'm not going to go to that place, there's too many dogs there. How do you find ways to create spaces that cater to the people with kids and dogs, and then either other spaces or find a way in that same space to be like, all right, you can sit at this bar and it's going to be more for you.
We're hitting all the tough
still
questions.
Working through that.
Why don't you answer that, Evan?
Podcast once every 10 years.
We're still working through that. It's a common discussion throughout the entire company and our taproom leadership, especially because you take Union, for example. We've got a 15,000 square foot green space. Kids running around. We just had to make rules signage, no projectiles. Right? Doesn't matter if it's a soccer ball, a football, a basketball. You've got, people with their dogs sitting next to you.
Your kids must not be old enough yet to realize that everything is a projectile.
Yeah, we're still working through the right verbiage, and because ultimately what happens is kids are running around. I've got 2 kids. You've got kids. It's usually not the kid's fault. It's the parents that are parenting.
Never the kid's fault.
And so how do you tell a parent to parent? It's a very tricky situation. But that is something that we are still working through.
Projectiles. You just toss a beer can at somebody's head if they're not watching their kids. Get in line.
But yeah, it's tough. It is tough. We've talked about implementing a 3-bark policy for dogs. Like, I have dogs. I like to bring them out. But we're ultimately here for the paying customers that want to sit down and enjoy a beer. And if that dog is going crazy, nobody's having a good time.
Right.
Yeah.
In my head, like I do separate spaces based on what I'm looking for. Like that's when people ask, "Oh, what's your favorite brewery to go to?" And like, well, it depends. You know, like are my kids with me? Is my dog with me? Is my wife with me? Am I with my friends? Am I by myself? Am I hungry? Am I not hungry? You know, how thirsty am I? Is it hot outside? Is it cold? Like all of these create different places that I want to go to, and I'm really interested in the places that have managed to create like a different space, be it a different tap room or even a space within their tap room. That it's like, okay, I go here and it feels like an adult bar, but then I go here and it's like, obviously this is where the families are going to hang out. And like finding those ways that different spaces can provide different experiences for people, or different spaces create different locations create different experiences, I think is very, very interesting.
It's been difficult, as Evan said, and I think one of the things that helps us is the proximity of our locations. I tend to think that most families are going to come to Union or Factory 52. That's just where they have the ability to bring kids, run around. Although all of our breweries are family friendly, you know, Covington seems to be that place where people can go to the rooftop, where we are very, very intentional about how kids interact there. We don't allow kids to run around up there. Like it is very much so meant to be that space. Right. But you got to be delicate, right? Like we understand and we want to be approachable to all of these environments, but you need to make sure that people are enjoying it. So it's an interesting take.
There aren't many places that have managed to hit both. It seems like they just lean one way or the other.
Sure.
And just been like, that's who we are. You know, like we're not kid friendly. We're very kid friendly.
Yep.
As new spaces do open up in the future, do you see them all kind of being that same personality as Union or as Factory 52? Is this the kind of the model of what a successful taproom for you guys looks like?
I think it's location dependent.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, Union made a ton of sense because it's suburban. I guess Factory 52 as well.
That kind of factors into the question too. Then location. Are these the locations that seem to make the most sense for you guys?
I think by and large, yes. But again, we will look at everything. Like we see a lot of opportunities. I think that's one thing that, as you mentioned, is people are trying to figure out how to grow, how not to grow, the number of opportunities to acquire or take over, whatever that may be, have increased significantly. We look at them all independently. We have a long conversation about some of them. And I think it really just depends on what is the actual infrastructure of the area around it. Like who is the customer? You know, it would not make a ton of sense to put, you know, this type of thing in the middle of an area with a lot of 20-year-old kids, right? And so I think for us, it really location specific. I'll also say one of the big reasons we're pausing, like we this was a great opportunity. We're so excited about it, but we now have to really reinvent how we program these spaces. Like now these things are taking on a life of their own. They have like Wednesdays look like Saturdays in a lot of locations, and that requires a whole different team structure, a whole different communication structure, because now you've brought this space that's being looked at and expected to be the community hub with a lot of other stakeholders. So it isn't just Braxton, hey, we want to do Wimbledon outside and we're just going to do it and not tell anybody. It's like, no, if you really want that to be well done, we need to get the gatherer on board. We need to get the landlord on board. We need to be thinking about down in Union, what can graders do with their pastries? What can Dewey's do with their pizza? And how do we kind of really allow 1 + 1 to = 3 rather than just here's another brewery event? And that is going to be a challenge for sure as we head into the back half of the year.
Well, and events they're different in different places. Like what people want here is going to be different than what people want at Union and what people want at Covington. And like that, again, a lot of places have not figured that out. Like, oh, this is a trivia night. We're just doing trivia.
Sure.
Let's go a little deeper than that. I just had another thought and then I forgot what I was going to ask. I got stuck on trivia now. When I walk into a brewery and I don't know that there's something like that going on, karaoke, singo, things like that it can ruin the experience too. So like just that communication with people and like so many places just don't understand what they're doing. They're just like, everybody else is doing this thing, so we're supposed to do it too. And it's like, no, like stop and pay attention to what people actually want in the tap room before you start just throwing stuff out there. Oh, it's going to drive me nuts. What was I going to ask? Jeez, my brain doesn't work anymore. What about kind of the bigger picture of Cincinnati craft beer? How do you guys feel about where things are going? Do things look like they're going in a positive direction or not?
It's a good question. I mean, I think Cincinnati is, I mean, it's a beer town. It's a great beer city. It's a great city for beer. We're fortunate that we have a lot of local breweries. I think it's going in a decent direction for an industry that, is down. It seems to be here to stay. I don't know if you want to add.
Yeah, I think to your point, Cincinnati is very unique in that we love to support local. That is a huge, like there's a lot of pride and passion in the city of who we are. And because of that, there's a lot of really great products being created. So I think you're going to see the ones that continue to invest in space, product, events, those types of things do incredibly well, and continue to grow. And I think you're going to see that separation from the ones that aren't doing that got into this maybe because it was fun. And, it's hard. I mean, it is hard work. We talk about it all the time. Like it's not that it's not fun. It's still way better than alternative careers, but it's hard. I mean, there are days where you're like, why are we still doing this? But, you get to sit back on a Friday night and see a couple hundred people enjoying what you've built, and that fulfillment doesn't exist in a lot of places. Right. So it's really an interesting balance. I think that the industry as a whole still has some thinning out to do, unfortunately. I think the number of breweries that Cincinnati needs to land at is in that 40 to 50 range. And
That's
I think
interesting.
I think that a lot of people that have started them, because a developer that was like, hey, I need a brewery in this community, are finding quickly that isn't really what is needed. It's the energy and the effort and the life that gets breathed into it through these spaces. And again, that's hard work. So
do you think when you say something like 40 to 50 breweries, do you think that we will have more places that are several locations, one brewery serving several different neighborhoods out of smaller kind of tap rooms? Do you think that's where things are going?
I think consolidation is 100% going to continue. I don't know who, what, where, or how, but I do. I mean, I was speaking. I actually got to spend a little bit of time a few weeks ago with Barry Holmes, who's the CEO of the brewery out of San Francisco or out of San Diego. He flew in to tour bourbon country, and myself and a buddy and him went down to a few distilleries, and we were just talking a lot and just about the state of the state, because he gets to see it across. They were nationwide. Now they're like 25 states, and it's very interesting, the different business models, because they're big in distribution, very small tap room. But, a lot of the conversation was, I think a lot of the number of breweries was built off of the boon that we've seen in developer dollars. If you think about it, like a lot of them, were anchored by new neighborhoods, new developments, those sorts of things that, hey, I like this. I mean, this is a prime example. This is a couple $100 million development with 2 breweries in it. And it's you've got to make sure that the customer is on board with that. And so I do think you're going to see a lot of those leases come up in, 3 to 5 years, and whether or not they renew will be a bigger question mark.
Right. I mean, I guess like when I look at the number of breweries in the city, like when I count it, I'm always counting multiple locations. I don't know if we looked at just the number of actual like brewing companies, we'll put it that way.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that number is right now. But I bet it's probably close to that 40 to 50 number, right? Let's see. That's everybody. I don't know if I have this broken down. Oh, maybe. 68, would that be right?
Possibly.
No. That's actual like
locations
places that I think are producing beer. So that's counting like both Third Eye locations as separate ones, because they make beer in both. So no, it's probably closer to that 50 number right now as far as actual single entities. I don't know. I remember where I was going to go before when you were talking about opening new spaces and you get more opportunities. I think that there is something too of when you become known as a place that is opening new tap rooms,
Sure.
you become a magnet for people kind of looking to offer you those opportunities.
Absolutely.
And we've already seen it. Well, maybe it's a little bit of a joke online, but every time somebody closes right now, did somebody tell Braxton? Does that bother you, or is that maybe like does that show that you're doing something right, that people know that you're growing, like you are one of those places that is
I think
active.
What we talk a lot about is we're very fortunate in that we get to see and work with other family-owned businesses that have done this. Grader's has 55 plus scoop shops. 36 of them are in Greater Cincinnati. Dewey's has 26 pizzerias, and 12 of them are in Greater Cincinnati. Do we think we're going to get there? Probably not. Like I don't know that we even have aspirations to get there. But we do look at every opportunity. And so when we hear that stuff and see that stuff, I think at one point I saw on one social media that we were the Frishes of beer.
Oh God, no.
That sounded a little backhanded.
If
but
somebody had said that 15 years ago, I'd be like, okay.
But, as we think about it, like we know and believe that there are opportunities in all of these neighborhoods. And so, more often than not, I can tell you when a brewery closes, we probably had a conversation with them. Whether and it isn't always just, hey, we want to acquire a partner, whatever. It's a lot of them are like, what do you think about? And we just try to help if we can, because we do. I will say we do care a lot about the fabric of that community. Like we do want there to be a Madtree, a Rheingeist, a High Grain. Like we want those breweries to exist because they make us all better. Like that healthy competition is real. So it's interesting.
Well, like anytime I go to another city that I expect is going to have great beer, like more often than not, I'm let down. I go there, we're on vacation, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to grab a beer. And like you go and like, all right, what? You have to go through like 4 beers before you find something that makes you happy. Sure. And like, we don't have that problem here. You can walk into almost any brewery. There's still a couple out there. You guys know who you are, hopefully, that are just that aren't making great beer, but almost everybody's making good beer. And like, you can just randomly just pick a tap, and it's like, oh yeah, that's a good beer. And like, that's not normal. And I hope that everybody still kind of realizes that here in Cincinnati, but I think they're kind of losing sight of it. There should be a rule that you have to leave Cincinnati like once every year and go somewhere and drink the beer and then come back and be like, see, I told you. You guys mentioned Asheville and you like going to Napa. Are there any other beer cities that you guys really like going to, that you really like kind of how that scene is? I
go to Asheville probably 3 or 4 times a year.
Asheville's
honestly.
great.
I love it there. I don't know. Other cities. Indy's fun. I love visiting Indy and Sun King and Taxman, and but yeah, we are kind of spoiled here in Cincinnati.
Extremely
having the quality of beer and the number of places
and Graders. Every time I'm in another city, I'm like, oh, you gotta try our ice cream place. It's been around since. And you try it. I'm like, it's fine, but it's not Graders. There's nothing better than Graders.
Right.
Used to be that way with Frisch's. Oh man, that is a book just waiting to be written one of these days. The downfall of Frisch's. Is there anything else you guys want people to know about Braxton? You think that they don't know? 10 years is kind of wild to think about. Like, I remember when Mount Carmel hit 10 years, like it was mind blowing that there could be a craft brewery that had been around for 10 years in Cincinnati. And then like right about now, we're starting to see some of these places all kind of hit that number. Like, oh my God, like we're going to have like, 10, 15 breweries that are 10 years old or older. It's nuts.
It's amazing. No, I think we covered a lot. I really appreciate you doing this as always.
Well, I appreciate you guys.
Hope to see you around.
Yeah, I'll definitely be around. I actually like coming over here a lot because it's gets me away from kind of downtown and that chaos, but it still has a lot of stuff. I can walk around. I can just do something, and and then stop at the Happy Hollow on the way out of Factory 52. If anybody comes to Factory 52 and does not stop at the Happy Hollow and drink a crappy light beer before you go home, you're doing it wrong. You're supposed to do that.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
I
Cheers.
appreciate it. Cheers.
Everybody, if you have not been to Factory 52 lately, get to Factory 52. If you haven't had a Braxton beer lately, get a Braxton beer, because I will go on record and say that they are one of the best breweries here in Cincinnati as far as quality of beer. Never afraid of what I'm going to order there, because everything's great. So get there, have a beer, get out and support somebody local. That's the moral of all of this. And we'll be back. Actually, I think we'll be back next week. For once, we'll have 2 weeks in a row with a brewcast. So stay tuned for that. And if you really like this or any of the stuff that I do, go to thegnarlygnome.com/support. Lots of fun stuff coming for Gnomies over there, and working on some really cool projects that I think you guys will like. Cheers.
Cheers.
See you later.
Thank you.